Unlock the secret picks of fantasy football week 12. Avoid the fumbles, score the touchdowns, and dominate your leagues with these must have players in week 12 that'll help you win this week and throughout the playoffs. Stick around because I'm going to make sure to give you a guaranteed winning strategy as we go through every waiver of quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, tight ends, and even defenses. It's the playoffs. I have to make sure you have everybody you need. Let's get started with this list. All right. First guy, let's talk about it. It's Zach Charbonnet. We've talked about him millions of times, so I'm not going to waste your time a lot. He's only 38.1% rostered in Yahoo and ESPN leagues, and we're going to see that jump because Kenneth Walker hurt his oblique. It's probably at least 1 to 2 weeks, maybe even more. But you're talking about an every down back now with a pretty decent offense. You're without Kenneth Walker in this offense. Geno Smith is dealing with a tricep injury on his throwing arm. What happens then? Check downs and running the ball. And I know San Fran's not a great matchup on Thanksgiving, but volume is always king. Always. There's no question about that. Take the volume, get your 20 touches, possibly even 25. And I think he's a great option. So if you haven't been listening to this video, first off, what are you doing? Second off, go get Zach Charbonnet so I can stop bringing him up in these damn videos. But we're going to go fix something next with the quarterback position because holy hell, we lost Joe Burrow. We've lost like 11 quarterbacks this season. We need someone who could fix it. And who can be our savior? Well, that's Baker Mayfield. Listen, Baker Mayfield is rostered in a lot of leagues, 49.2%. But here's the thing. It means he's still out there in almost 50% of leagues, so I get to talk about him as long as it's underneath 50. They'll be on this show. And Baker Mayfield has a great opportunity this week to win you your fantasy football week 12 and possibly help you get into the playoffs because first things first, he has an awful, atrocious passing defense, which means he has to go blow for blow with whoever's across the way, and he's got to throw the ball a lot, and he's got to put yards up, and this is what this team's built on because they don't really run the ball well. Rachaad White is more of a pass catcher than a runner, so they have to throw the ball. And he's playing against these Indianapolis Colts that they're not a great defense. He'll be able to put some yards up against them, some touchdowns up against them. And they have one of the worst defensive backs in the rooms. You have Mike Evans over there. You have Chris Godwin if he's healthy. You got Trey Palmer, who's coming on as a little speedster guy. K-Dot and Rachaad White. He has weapons. But here's the thing about the Colts that everybody doesn't realize. They run the 11th most plays in the NFL right now per game. That means they're a very fast offense, which means they're going to push both sides of the ball to do something. So if this is a DFS play for you, keep in mind that both sides of the ball can play there. But if you're looking for somebody for your redraft team, Baker Mayfield is that guy. Hold on, wait a minute. For my man Meek Mills, we cannot move on just yet. We have to talk about the quarterback on the other side of that ball because for some reason, Gardner Minshew is 9.9% rostered in ESPN and Yahoo leagues. And just doesn't make sense to me. I'm not saying that he's really good, and I'm not saying that he's amazing, but he's a little bit of mobile. He's got a little bit of mobility to him. I'll take that. That's always nice to have a little Konami code, even if it is the Walmart version of it. He's got an offense, I just said, 11th in the league with most plays per game. You always want a fast-paced offense. And he's got some weapons there. He's got Jonathan Taylor. He's got Michael Pittman, and he's got Josh Downs, who stay tuned. We're going to talk about him in a little bit. But Gardner Minshew has the ability to move your fantasy projections up just a little bit higher each week, especially in week 12 when he faces this Tampa Bay defense it's just bad in the passing game. It could stop the run, it can't stop the pass, and because of that, you need to have Gardner Minshew in your lineups. We talked about his quarterback, Gardner Minshew, but now let's talk about Josh Downs. Josh Downs, if he wasn't on your roster, not a big deal. He had an injury. You might have had to drop him. The season's been bonkers. But 47.4% of you do have Josh Downs, which means 50-something% of you don't. And we should fix that one because before being limited by his injury in the last 2 games, Downs had an 18.9% target share and a 21.7% air yard share with 2 yards per route run and a 19.2 first read share. And that's very important. The first read thing is very important because this Colts offense is an RPO offense, and RPO triggers around the first read on the offense. You need that for your fantasy team. He's been about a wide receiver 2 for your lineups, and he's always finished in a pretty high standard these last couple of weeks, not barring the last 2 with injury, because he's been wide receiver 32, wide receiver 18, wide receiver 20, wide receiver 4, and wide receiver 29. And oh yeah, we've already talked about it. He gets the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who is just one of the worst pass defenses I have ever seen on the football field. They're terrible. You can throw yards against them. There's a lot of plays that the Colts run. You get maximum opportunity opportunity with a guy who should still be out there. Take that shot with Josh Downs this week. And if you don't have Josh Downs and you need somebody else because he's already off, let's talk about the next guy. Shockingly enough, Elijah Moore. Elijah Moore is rostered in 39.2% of teams, and he might have got dropped a lot. I know I did in one league because Deshaun Watson was out, but it might be time to bring him back because DTR, Dorian Thompson-Robinson, he doesn't throw the ball deep. Even when he does, it's not pretty, and that hurts Amari Cooper. But that doesn't hurt people like Elijah Moore and even David Njoku, who, if he's out there, get him because 15 targets is wild for a tight end. But everything has an A dot of like 5 to 7 yards max with Dorian Thompson-Robinson, and that fits Elijah Moore. And on an offense where they're going to have to create something because they don't have Nick Chubb, they don't have Deshaun Watson. You know who gets those end arounds? You know who gets the jet sweeps? You know who gets the design plays for him? Oh, yeah. That's Elijah Moore. He's a very, very amazing, talented wide receiver. They just got to figure out a way to get him to work with this young quarterback where he's had 7 targets in that past week. They're going to use him. It's not the most beautiful play. He should be able to be getting on your roster, especially if you play in a fab league and you're just unable to put a lot of money out. Elijah Moore will be a little cheaper and allow you to get a good wide receiver who's getting a high amount of targets to give you a little bit of a safer floor for week 12. Let's talk about this. Isaiah Likely, 2% rostered, and we know that is going to go through the roof now because Mark Andrews is hurt. And yes, there were some reports like, oh, he's going to be back before the season's over, but not for your fantasy season, he won't be. I'd pretty much stop worrying about Mark Andrews and know that Isaiah Likely can give you a set it and forget it type tight end for your fantasy team. He had 3 top 10 tight end finishes last year, barring around the injuries of Mark Andrews back then. And oh yeah, there was injuries to Lamar Jackson then too. So he was still doing things with less of an opportunity last season. The guy's talented. The guy can catch the ball, and that's all you really want from your tight end. Is he a top 3 option in the offense, and can he have good hands? Yes, he's on a great offense. That's great, which means if they're going to score a lot of points, they could drag the tight end along. I feel like Isaiah Likely has a chance to dominate for you in the tight end position. So if you're looking for a tight end, and let's be honest, unless you have Kelsey, everybody is, Isaiah Likely is an option for you. All right, we're not going to spend a lot of time on Rashid Shaheed because he's 34.5% rostered because enough of you guys aren't listening to me. The Rashid Shaheed is the truth. Now we have Michael Thomas missing because of a serious knee injury, and they're coming off a bye, which means they gave Shaheed just a little bit of extra time to figure out the playbook as the wide receiver too. Now we might even have the gunslinger of Jameis Winston, and that could be beautiful. If Derek Carr doesn't play, we could just get a guy who wants to throw all over the field in Winston. But even if Derek Carr plays, that's totally okay because Shaheed can give you the bomb and give you that explosive game, and that's beautiful. But you also have a guy who can command 20.9% target share, an 18.7% air yard share, and 24.2% first read share once Michael Thomas went out of the offense last time they played. Those all sound like great numbers. Those are all wide receiver 2 and better type numbers. That's what you want on your team. Please go take Shaheed. Realize that he's mini Deshaun Jackson in 2023 and flourish in your fantasy football season with him in your flex position. All right, we're moving into Demario Douglas, 28.4%. Pop Douglas, if you want to call him, whatever you want to call him. I don't really care. It's not my favorite play of the week because there's really no bright spots in New England because, like, who's the quarterback? Is it Zappy? Is it Jones? Doesn't really matter. They kind of suck. But this is kind of a PPR play because since week 7, Douglas has had a 21.5% target share. But that's not all. He runs 1.88 yards per route run, and he's 27.1% as the first read target. That's kind of beautiful, that first read target share. That's wide receiver 2 numbers and better. That's what you want. He's a safe floor. He's not really a home run play. A lot of him reminds me of like a Jamison Crowder, way back when. And if you need that, if you just need to make sure you get a solid 6 to 10 points in fantasy football for a full PPR, Douglas is your guy. Pop is your boy. It's not going to be pretty. You might not want to watch the game and just look at your fantasy stats when it's over. Jaden Reed of the Green Bay Packers, a 27.3% roster, and it's not my favorite play. But again, when I'm looking for somebody to fill the gaps, what I'm looking for is, can he give me 5 targets and can he do something? Well, he has been coming into his own lately with this offense because he's had 5 or more targets in 3 of the last 4 games. They're doing end rounds with him, and you can't really run on the Detroit Lions. So what are you going to have to do? You're going to have to get creative, and you're going to have to pass the ball. The way that the game is going to work out, I don't see this being a 7-3 slugfest. I do see this being 28-21 or something like that, where the Packers are going to have to throw an offense. And Jordan Love likes him. Jordan Love Love likes Romeo Dobbs. Jordan Love does not seem to work well with Christian Watson. So I would take this man and I would put him on my lineup if I needed a wide receiver because I do think that this game is going to have a lot of points scored and some yards going on a prime time slot. It's going to be real fun to watch. But Jaden Reed at 27.3% rostered. If you couldn't get any of the guys I named before, he's the guy. One final selection before we get into the strategy of everything for week 12 and beyond. But Rondell Moore, yes, he's kind of dinged up a little bit, but he has a rapport with Kyler Murray. You saw it on that deep ball. You've seen him be a PPR machine before in the past. Kyler Murray obviously likes him. So if you're looking for a PPR play, I'm not going to give you a bunch of stats on him because I'm not huge on Rondell Moore, but a 25.2% rostership between ESPN and Yahoo. There's not many options out there this week. It's not a beautiful week for what you want to do with fantasy football, but Rondell Moore in the right situation could possibly get you 6 for 70 and give you 13 points in a fantasy football league that plays by full PPR. All right, so we're doing the best of the rest now because what we're going to do is we're going to go through all the waivers because, yes, I gave you about 9 players that you should be focusing on. But maybe you want to talk about them all. Let's go through positions, and we're going to go first through Baker Mayfield, Gardner Minshew, Jordan Love, Matthew Stafford, and Derek Carr, because those are the quarterbacks, the best ones that I think are out there at least. And we talked about Baker. We'll move through that. Gardner, we talked about that. Jordan Love, he has his games, and I do think the ball is going to need to be thrown a little bit more than you can with running the ball without Aaron Jones against a good Detroit Lions defense. I don't see it. They're going to have to pass the ball. And if that's the case, Jordan Love hops over Matthew Stafford, even though he's playing Arizona. I have him hopping over Matthew Stafford because Matthew Stafford might be without Cooper Kupp. Matthew Stafford still kind of dealing with the injury. He left a little bit of the game in week 11. And then down at the bottom is Derek Carr. Even if he's healthy, I don't really want to touch him this week. So I suggest you don't either. Now we move in the running backs, and here are my 11 running backs. And we talked about Charbonnet, but you see the list here. It's not pretty. It's not my favorite, but I like Tajay Spears because he's playing Carolina, and they give up 1 to 2 touchdowns on the ground all the time. And Derrick Henry has not looked like Derrick Henry lately, and he's older. And if he gets injured, you got a league winner right there because the playoff schedule for Tennessee Titans running backs is beautiful. You have Ezekiel Elliott. I guess that's nice. Ty Chandler, meh. Alexander Madison still handling all the snaps. Elijah Mitchell is just like if CMC goes down. I like Gainwell a little bit. Keep an eye there because the Eagles always love to piss us off with how they use running backs. But everybody here, this is more of a who's injured, who has a possibility of getting injured. This is the point in the season that if you have any of these backup running backs on your waiver wire and you roster the starter, you need to go get this backup. Now is the time to handcuff, and that's why we're talking about these running backs here. Let's look into the wide receivers now. So we talked about Josh Downs. We talked about Moore. We talked about Shaheed, Douglas, Reed. Rashad Bateman's a good one because the LA Chargers defense stinks. They have allowed every quarterback to pass for at least 230 yards in the last, I believe, 9 games. Don't quote me on that one, but I know at least the last 5. You got Rashad Bateman here, and he's a deep ball threat, and Mark Andrews is out. And he's getting healthier, and he scored a touchdown last week. Maybe Bateman's finally turning into what we need him to be or what people have thought he was going to be, but I'm going to take the shot. That's somebody I didn't talk about in the beginning. Give me a wide receiver on a good offense who has lost their number 1 target. Somebody's going to have to step up. Why not Rashad Bateman? As for Odell Beckham, I'm just not into old wide receivers. Don't give me that. We talked about Rondell Moore. I don't like Noah Brown because there's too many cooks in the kitchen there now with all those options that CJ Stroud can throw to. And Jamison Williams, I've told you a few weeks back, go get him, and he's coming into his own. I think he has a 60% snap share now, but it's risky. You want to make the risk and hope that that first-round pedigree kicks out. Kudos to you. I'm not risking it this week. That's why there's only 17.3% rostership on him because it's just not worth the risk. Let's talk tight ends. We've talked about Isaiah Likely. We don't need to go there. Luke Musgrave is a nice one because Detroit does struggle a little bit against tight ends. So if you're really struggling, Luke Musgrave's out there. He gets about 4 or 5 targets every game. Can't be too mad at that for a tight end. Hunter Henry, don't want to touch that game at all. I don't know who the quarterback is. Cade Otton, I love him. He's the route king. He runs routes all the time. He always seems to have 4 to 6 targets a game. You can't be mad at that. And Michael Mayer, his targets are starting to ascend again under this new coach and new quarterback. So I like that. Johnny Smith, I'm not touching anything on the Falcons. I don't want Desmond Ridder as my quarterback. I'm not touching that. You have Tanner Hudson. Yuck. You have Donald Parham, who I'll shoot up the board a little bit in the future if Gerald Everett's out. But the Ravens are just a really damn good defense. Basically, it's Isaiah Likely, maybe Luke Musgrave. Then for me personally, I might have to flip flop how this list works here. And we're going to put K. Dotton over Hunter Henry eventually because I kind of like K. Dotton more. Finally, we're into defense. And here's what you want to do when it comes to defense right now. You need to keep looking ahead. Yes, this week matters. If you need to win, somebody like the Denver Broncos against Dorian Thompson-Robinson, they've been playing way better. They got the talent over on that side of the ball. I like it. Saints defense is always good. The rest of these defenses are just on the list because that's what's left. But look ahead. If you don't need a defense right now, but you have somebody like, let's say, the Ravens, who in week 17, your championship is playing the Miami Dolphins, and maybe you don't want to play that game against the Miami Dolphins, look at the playoff schedules. If one of these teams have a great playoff schedule, get them into your roster right now. I'm sure you don't need that seventh wide receiver or that third quarterback or your second quarterback even right now. There's a lot of things you could drop for a second defense to play ahead of the game because that's how you beat your opponents. There's about 5 weeks left, and it's time to think ahead. This is chess, not checkers. So hopefully these major players I told you in the beginning of the video, the 8 or 9 players I told you to look into, you can get them on your roster because if you can, you should. And for the rest of these guys, they're great options if you can't get any of those 9. If you need any help with your fantasy rosters, please comment below. Give me your options. Give me your questions. I'd love to help you. Give me your start sits for our next video a little bit later in the week because it's going to come Friday after Turkey Day because obviously I just want to eat and nap on Thursday and watch some damn football. We've had a great time here. I hope to see you again. Make sure you like, comment, and share, and I'll talk to you later this week.